then we won the prelim, and then all of a sudden we're in the grand final. I was like, holy, how did this happen? And we just kept things about right. I feel like I had first hands on that ball,
Exactly. And then my favorite
right?
part is the little sassy little flick of the ear in the background.
I heard a lot in terms of some of the opportunities that I've been granted.
Mm.
It's so great to me. So Kimmy G, if you are listening, I've told you before, but a big thank you to everything that you've done. And
Hello, and welcome back to The Sporting Scoop, the podcast that takes a deep dive into the lives of sport's biggest trailblazers. In today's episode, I had the absolute pleasure of sitting down with Dylan Nexhip. He is the captain of the Australian Kelpies, the international men's netball team that has remained undefeated in the televised era of the sport. Dylan is also the current assistant coach of the New South Wales Swifts and the Suncorp Super Netball League. From picking up a netball in grade 4 in Tongala, Victoria, to dedicating his life to playing, coaching and growing the men's game, his story is nothing short of inspiring. So let's get into it. Please welcome Dylan Nexhip. Dylan, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
No worries. Thank you very much for coming on. You have probably the busiest schedule in netball at the moment. So thank you very much for giving Netball Scoop a little bit of your time. And just for context for those that don't really know, so Dylan is the coach of the Swifts, and they had a game on Saturday versus the Melbourne Mavericks, which was a very close game, which I know probably wasn't best for the heart, but and then he's also just started off his Nationals campaign with the New South Wales men's team yesterday, defeating the West Coast Thunder 73-39. So let's start off with a little roundup. So the Swifts survived a tenacious effort from the Mavericks, 68-62 on Saturday. How did you feel about that tightly contested battle?
Yeah, obviously a big feeling of relief at the end of the game. We always knew that the Mavs were going to come really hard. They're just a team that are relentless for 60 minutes, and we got off to a really good start, which was our focus because our start wasn't as great the week before against Fever, but we knew that they would just keep coming, and they did, and credit to them, they put out a really good performance. But really proud of our girls and the way they stood up in the last five, and everyone played their role throughout the game. I thought Tegan O'Shaughnessy come on and did a tremendous job creating havoc and winning some ball for us. And then Helen Housby really stood up in the last 5 minutes as well. So took a while for the old heart rate to drop after that game. The adrenaline was definitely pumping, but that's what you love about the sport. You love games like that.
Yeah, exactly. And there seemed to be quite a different defensive approach, I guess, from the week before in terms of especially around the penalties. It was a lot of a cleaner game for the Swifts. And what were your kind of thoughts on being able to, from round 1 to round 2, being able to already have that kind of drop already?
Yeah, it's definitely something that we're aware of and something that we've been working on. And obviously the footwork and the decision making is a big piece of our defense game plan. And something we want to be really known for is that ability to shift between different defense structures and strategies based on who we're playing. And obviously the Mavs lineup with Shimona Jock there, who was incredible in the game, provides you with something different to do. And we want to just make sure that we're off the body as best we could and have a real go with the ball out the front. And something we want to be known for is that ability to build pressure as a unit. And to do that, you need to be able to stay in play. So yeah, we're making some really good progress in that space. And I'm excited to see how it continues to develop.
Yeah, and then your match against the West Coast Thunder. Last year it was a much closer battle between the two of you teams. I think last year was 44-35, and then this year you ended up winning by 34 goals. How do you think that first round matchup is kind of setting your team up for success for the rest of the tournament?
Yeah, I think West Coast Thunder are always a quality team. They've got quality players all over the court. Look at someone like Jerome Gilbert and Draven Lee Tura, like a really fantastic circle, and they've got some really tall defenders down there as well that can win ball for them. So I think we knew what to expect in terms of the intent that we needed to bring and the work rate that we'd have to have. And we went out there and put together a really solid 60 minutes, and all 12 of us contributed to that result. And I think it was, testament to the work that we've done in the preseason, and everyone's been grinding off the court to make sure that when we get here for this week, we're in the best possible position to perform. So I think it was really nice to see all the hard work that we've done come together, and get our campaign off to a really good start.
Yeah, well, I love hearing your insight about netball. I've obviously throughout this research process, I've watched quite a few little interviews that you've had, and because I can just see that there's so much passion and dedication to the sport there. Um, and I know that this has kind of been it since the very beginning of your life. I mean, you grew up in Tongala,
Yeah,
a country town of around 2000 in Victoria. And I know that your mum would bring you, Ben, Corey, and Abby to the netball courts on every Saturday and Thursday.
yeah.
Um, so what do you remember about those initial experiences of netball and kind of what drew you to the sport?
Yeah, I just remember, like we talked about there, getting dragged along to the courts and
Hmm.
just I just remember sitting there and just watching and then, running and grabbing a ball and shooting some hoops and whatnot. But I just fell in love with the sport through watching it. And, when you're so little and you're watching adults play, you think they're so big and so fast. And then, and at the time they absolutely were. Some of the
Mm,
netball in country Victoria is so quality. And I remember watching it in awe of these female athletes who would just go out there week in, week out, and just go out there with this passion and love for the sport. And I think growing up in a small town with a small community, once you get involved in a football netball club, which is what you have in country Victoria,
mm,
you really develop that sense of community and the connection that you can make with people is what continues to draw people back into the sport. And then yeah, I just, thought this game was so great and I loved the tactical side behind it and the technical side. And I just couldn't wait to get out there and finally have my opportunity to play when I think I started playing when I was in grade four. And
hmm.
I remember, turning up to the courts on a Saturday morning. You'd get there at 8:30 and it'd be freezing in the middle of winter and, running around on, a couple of boys there, not many of us, but it
Mm,
never fazed me. It never worried me that, on a court of 14, there was 13 girls and I was the only boy. I just wanted to go out there and compete and play the sport that I loved. And yeah, absolutely loved those chances, when I was a little kid.
yeah, I mean, and also talked about with this with Cruz last week was a big kind of connection point when we were talking was that similar experience that we've had with men's netball. I mean, it sounds like it's obviously a very common approach, especially in New Zealand, Australia, that if you do want to play netball, you end up at that age around 11 or 12 where they pretty much tell you you can't play anymore. So I would love to hear if that was it a similar experience that you kind of went down as well?
Yeah, it was. I aged out after year six. So once I
Yeah.
turned 12 and then had to go into high school. So I aged out after that. There was no real opportunity, particularly where I was living. So then I played AFL, for the same club that I played netball for through there till I was about probably 20,
Yeah.
so for about 8 or so years. Played under 14s football, under 17s football, and then kind of, dabbled in netball when I could, if there was a mixed competition or anything like that, and a little bit more once I got to uni.
Yeah.
But from that, there wasn't a whole lot of opportunity to continue to play, particularly as a teenager.
Yeah. And when you were playing, was there quite a lot of like stigma around being a men's netball or like a boys netball player?
Not to my knowledge. Like I was,
Yeah.
and if there was, I was probably naive around it. Like, once I turned up to the courts on the Saturday and whatnot, like nothing else mattered. Once I stepped over that line, and I'm a pretty competitive person. So once you go into
Hmm.
battle, you go into battle, and I never really listened to anything that was going on behind the scenes because at the end of the day, I was having so much fun and getting to enjoy what I do. So anything that was said that doesn't really matter. And I can remember, some of my first games I filled in for the level of I played my very first weekend. I filled in for the division above us, and then I went back and
Yep.
played in my team. And my coach gives me the goal defense bib, and she goes, "Right, you've got one job, and that is not to let the other team score any goals." And I said, "Righto, no worries at all."
Yeah.
And so I think I had some really great junior coaches who embraced having a boy in the team and accepted me and used my strengths on the court. And I never had an issue with the girls in the team or teammates or anything like that. For
Hmm.
every team that I've been in, particularly when I was young, everyone's been so inclusive and embraced the opportunity.
Yeah, love it. And I'd kind of love to hear about your return to netball. I mean, I've seen, with Cruz, it was kind of he used social netball as a way to build those connections to then find clubs and stuff like that that allowed more um adult experience, I guess you would say. And then I know that Liam Bulkadia also kind of got scouted at a mixed netball game for his talent. So I'd love to hear kind of how you ended up returning and then being able to rise through those ranks.
Yeah, I guess my pathway is probably a little bit different again, and I think that's what you'll
Mm,
find in men's netball, that everyone's pathway is a little bit different, and particularly being a regional athlete, I didn't have a M League that was really accessible to me, or nor did I really know that it existed. So once I went to uni, I played a couple of uni games and connected with a couple of people there. And then started to build a little bit of a relationship with different people that were involved in the men's netball space. And then I moved to Melbourne, I think it was in 2015. Yeah, so about 10 years ago now. And one of the guys that I'd played with when I was at uni in Bendigo invited me along to play in his M League team.
mhm,
And then that's how I got involved with the M League in Victoria. So I played a couple of years there, and then I trialed for the Victorian state teams, and got involved in the pathway there, playing a couple of years in their mixed division, in their mixed opens team, having success and winning a national title there on the Gold Coast, which was pretty cool. And then after that, I continued to just play the M League, and my last M League season was 2019 in
yep.
Victoria, which was a really good year. We won the grand final in extra time, which was a pretty cool feeling.
Love it.
I'd coached before in extra time and come out the other side, so it was nice
Yeah.
to go out there as a player in extra time and get the win. And I had some awesome people in my team that year, people like Guy Keane, who was incredible to play with. I got to play with my brother as well, which was pretty
Hmm.
awesome. So little memories like that really just continued to, yeah, they were great memories to create. And then in 2020, I moved to Sydney, and I guess in terms of where I've been able to go, that's probably one of the best moves I've made. And it wasn't for netball; it was for other reasons, and
Mm,
um, opportunities really started to open up for me there. And then 2022, I got selected in the New South Wales Open men's team, and then that really opened some doors for me. So we went on to win the national championships that year in Adelaide, and then I got
mhm.
selected in the Australian squad as well, and then lucky enough to be selected in the touring 12. And then from that as well, I was allocated the role of captain too, which was pretty cool. So, and then my opportunities continued to come from that, and I think obviously there's a lot of things that have fallen my way in terms of timing and opportunity and things like that. But also on the flip side, for me to be able to get that opportunity, I've obviously done the work to be
Mm.
able to put myself in a position and to be appointed into different positions or selected into different teams. So that's kind of my journey through, and then I've continued to work through the being part of the men's netball league in New South Wales, member of the New South Wales Open Men's, and the captain of the Kelpies for the last 4 years, which has been pretty amazing.
Yeah, and throughout my research for this interviews, I did come across that you were most of your national, international kind of experience were from those mixed teams. Not only playing, as you said, Guy Keane and your brother Corey, but you also played with Cardiff Dragons, Al McDonald, which
Yep.
is Corey's partner too. So I would kind of love to hear what drew you to playing a little bit more of mixed netball instead of the like traditional men's game, and kind of what playing mixed netball kind of brought to your game that you feel skills that you definitely still use now.
Yeah, I think mixed was a big part for me in terms of my pathway, and I think again being a regional athlete, I'd never seen a game of men's netball played before, but I'd seen or participated in many games of mixed netball before,
Mm,
and I really just loved the opportunity to have guys and girls out there competing, and the ability for a game to have such different skill sets with what the girls bring and then what the boys bring into a game, and it kind of suited the way I played. Like I loved playing goalkeeper, and I came through as a
hmm.
little bit of a goalkeeper and played a lot of goalkeeper through mixed and in the Victorian M League as well. And I wanted to continue to play a little bit in that position, and mixed was an opportunity for me to do that. Um, Obviously, coming up, transitioning to men's, you're playing against shooters that are quite tall, and unfortunately, my height doesn't quite allow me to play goalkeeper in this
Hmm.
space. And and that's kind of where it went from there. And we had some really good success, like I said, in 2017 on the Gold Coast, and our team connected so well off the court that we really wanted to continue, working together and competing together. So that was kind of my driver behind that. And obviously that year as well, I had the opportunity to play in the Australian mixed team.
Mm.
And I think, I always consider, should have I gone to men's earlier? Should I not have, or whatever it is? But I think, at the end of the day, everyone's journey is different and it's what you make
Mm.
it. And I think that's okay as well. And I don't have any what ifs. I'm really happy with the choices that I've made and where I am now. And all of it, added pieces to the puzzle, and it made me a better netballer, and it made me a better thinker, and everything in between. And yeah, I'm really grateful for the opportunities and path, and yeah, the doors that mixed open for me. And I'm also really glad now to be in the men's space too.
Yeah, and speaking about your goalkeeper experience, I did find a clip that I did find quite funny. So I thought I would quickly share this now just to kind of emphasize the point you were going on that obviously, as we've talked about, pretty competitive and whatever, which we gotta love. It's a bit blurry, but
Oh yeah. There we go. A little bit of tussle under the ring. Seems about right. I feel like I had first hands on that ball
exactly. And then my favorite
though.
part is the little sassy little flick of the ear in the background.
Too funny, too funny. Hopefully, I've grown up a little bit since
Yeah.
then. I'm not sure that I truly have, but I'll tell myself that I have.
Exactly. I mean, I when I saw that clip, I was just cracking up, and I knew full well. Like even the commentator was like, "I can't." What I think he said something along the lines of, "Dylan doesn't want to give up the ball," and I was like,
No,
"I think
never.
that's pretty synonymous with your career, I guess, is just that grafting kind of player, you know?"
Yeah, yeah, and
Um,
that's definitely something I've tried to develop over time. You've got to have your point of difference as a player, and
mm,
for me, it's about doing the groundwork, and particularly as I've moved out into wing defense a little bit more as well. Knowing that my role is there to set up the goal defense and goalkeepers, and for me to be able to do that, I've got to do the work out the front, and just own my role. And I
mm,
think the coaching side of things has really helped me understand, how to be more effective on court as well. And
mm.
you can't just go and look for ball whenever you feel like it. You've got to actually do the work that sets things up. So it's definitely something I've been working really hard at, and yeah, something I think I've got to a point where I can have impact in a game.
Lead now down to 5. Oh, Kylie. Oh, beautiful. He fist bump.
And quickly before we talk more about netball, I would love to talk a little bit of outside of netball.
Mm.
And I know that a lot of conversation for men's netball players is all about either you are a netballer or a controversy has kind of happened with netball. But throughout my research for this, I've seen that you also do a lot of traveling. You seem to be a bit of an adventurer. Going to Peru, Bolivia, Germany, Thailand, a whole lot of different travel. So I'd kind of love to hear what draws you to traveling as well.
I just love new experiences.
Mm,
And I think we live in a world where there's so many different cultures and so many different experiences that you can have. And I think it's a really good way to make you, help you develop as a person and make
mm,
you a little bit more grounded as well. Experiencing what else is in the world can really make you appreciate what you have as well, which is really nice. But I think it's a really good way to disconnect, from your own world for a little bit as well. And I've definitely needed that the last couple of years with pretty busy schedules. And I
mm,
don't like to use the word busy because, at the end of the day, I say yes to the things that I do, and it's my choice. So I don't say yes if I don't think I can do it. But
yeah.
it's a nice little way to just have a break and disconnect for a little bit and just go see what else is out there in the world. It's you can create some pretty special memories, and I think we're pretty lucky to live in a world that has so many different places you can go and different people that you can meet and different things that you can do. So just a nice way to just take a break, relax, and then
Mm.
refresh. I'm ready for the year ahead.
Yeah, and what is your favorite place that you've been to? I mean, that's probably quite hard, but yeah, what is it?
A couple of special places.
Mm,
We had a really great trip to South America last year,
yeah,
which was incredible, and seeing places like Machu Picchu and Iguazu Falls. And then we had
yeah.
New Year's Eve on Copacabana Beach in Rio de Janeiro, which
Oh,
was
wow.
incredible. We had we're on a rooftop of a hotel and had right in the
Oh,
center,
cool.
looking down onto the beach for the fireworks
Yeah.
was pretty incredible. So that's definitely one of the most memorable trips. And in 2019, I did a little trip to Europe with my mum, dad, and my sister. And this was pretty special for many reasons. It was the first time my dad had actually ever been overseas. So it was a
Wow.
really big twist in his arm to get him there, but we got him there
Yeah.
and he had the most amazing time. And the way that he still talks about it now, yeah, it's pretty magical. We visited Albania, which is where my grandparents were born, and
Oh, cool.
managed to go to some little villages where they grew up and saw the lifestyle that they began with.
Mm.
And again, that just, being able to see that and see dad in that space and being able to experience with him was amazing. And, I think thinking about that happening almost 100 years ago, my, grandparents were born in the 20s, and to see where as a family we've been able to get to now was kind of like a full circle moment and something that was really special to me. We're looking at a town with horses and carriages that still go and people
Oh,
walking along the
yeah.
cobbles, the dusty streets and everything like that, and getting to experience that culture was amazing. So I loved that.
Yeah, and as your kind of small town, the small town where you're like wearing no shoes and running around just getting dirty and everything like that, or is it kind of a bit more like industrial in a way?
Where I grew up.
Yeah.
No, oh goodness, we're on a dairy farm. So we're on a
Oh
dairy
yeah.
farm, which my parents have been on. It's been there for years. My mum's lived on the same road her whole entire life, which is pretty cool.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
so we grew up on a dairy farm, which at the time you think, oh, I wish I was in town where my friends
Yeah.
are. But now that we get to go back there and visit, it's so amazing, and you don't realize the luxury. And I think now, obviously living in Sydney, you don't realize the luxury of having so much space to just roam around and
Mm.
have some freedom. And we were pretty lucky to have to have so much space. And I can remember, we got a tennis court put in when we were pretty young, and my younger brother and I, Corey, we'd go for hours out there having royal battles, and now still being able to go back home and yeah, just be able to have some space out on the farm is pretty cool. But in town, yeah, there's probably times where I've walked in the supermarket, I will admit, with no shoes on before, but and I've occasionally gone to the dairy with no shoes on at all.
I mean,
That's okay. It gets
every
40 degrees in summer. You can
yeah.
just rinse off anything that you need to. It's absolutely fine.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very traditional Kiwi and down under experience. You have to do it. You
You
have
do.
to.
You do.
So another passion I know of yours is kind of that education side. I know that you graduated with a bachelor's of education and you also have your master's.
Mhm.
And you kind of went down the teaching route. So I'm guessing when you brought up before that, you made that move to Sydney, was that kind of for teaching or was that for something that was a little bit different?
A little bit of both. I
Yeah.
was ready for a change, ready for something new, and with some relationships, a relationship that I had, and made a move
Mhm.
there because my partner and I were doing interstate, which was hard. So I was like, right, I
Mm.
was the one that kind of put my hand up and said, "Let's do this."
Yeah.
And then from that, I was really lucky to land a job at quite a sensational school in Sydney,
Hmm.
which is again has helped me in so many ways. I managed to get into a middle leadership position pretty quickly there, and the head of my school there has taught me so much in terms of how to lead, with this sense of ferocity, but also this sense of warmth. And she's really set me up with so many different leadership positions that I've gone into. And
Mm.
the school that I worked at is one of the biggest boys' private schools in New South Wales. And,
Yeah.
it's a high performance environment. So there's so many relatables to sport. You have to be on all the time. You've got quite big cohorts. I was the team leader of year five the last couple of years, and you're looking after seven classes, 175 kids, which means you've got 350 parents that you need to be in communication with as
Yeah.
well. So there were so many translatables between working there in high performance sport, and obviously having the leadership side that sat with it really helped set me up for success in different spaces. And it just the rigor of a school, and you kind of, like any workplace, you don't understand what a workplace is like until you actually step foot into it. It is
Yeah.
fast paced. Knox is go 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 all the time, and you learn to really manage your time well, and you learn to be, on top of things and delegate, but also really make sure that you want to perform and you want to do well. So yeah, that's kind of where I've been in education for the last 5 years, is in that space. And obviously at the end of last year, I had a really tough decision to make, because I was making really good progression in that educational space, and had to make a really tough call about whether I continue to push there and look to elevate myself to the next level, or whether I try something different and step into the coaching realm. And obviously I've stepped into the coaching realm now, and yeah, I still, one day a week will go in to do some casual work, which has been nice to keep in touch and dip my toes into the classroom. And I think you get to a point where you can't, and this is what I've had to realize, that you can't do everything, and sometimes you've got to make choices that you feel are right at the time, and then if it later down the track it's not the right choice, then it is what it is. But later down the track, if it is the right choice, then you can pat yourself on the back for being brave and stepping outside the comfort zone.
Yeah, I mean, and you talking about all those translatable skills. I mean, obviously, right now your role is the assistant coach of the New South Wales Swiss. I would love to hear kind of those early beginnings for coaching. I'm guessing you would have started in Melbourne, doing a lot of
I
coaching.
started coaching in 2013 was my first year.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Being the head coach of a team, and I was still in Country Vic, so I'd finished uni and had moved back home with my parents, and took on a coaching role at the local club. So I took on the A grade team. I had barely any coaching experience, just dabbled a little bit. And I understood the game, obviously, and all of that. But I think for me, learning was more about the people management side of things, was my biggest learning curve early on. And how do you manage expectations and little things like that, was was something I had to experience quite early. And funnily enough, in our very first year, I was coaching Tongala A grade. We were in the Murray Football Netball League, and we finished the year in sixth. And the top 6 teams made the finals, and then we won our first final, so got into the next level, and then we won our next final, and then we won the prelim, and then all of a sudden we're in the grand final. I was like, holy, how did this happen? And we just kept riding that wave, and then the grand final is such a blur, but I remember parts of it so vividly. And the team that we played, Mawela, had been the benchmark all year, and I think we were in front for 59 minutes of the game, and then all of a sudden we're up by 1 in the last minute. We lost our centre pass, and then they scored their centre pass, and then the buzzer went, and we lost by 1. And I was like, oh my God, how the hell did that happen? We had this, and this was going to be the best story ever, and not. And
the stories of filmmaking.
Yeah, literally. But to be able to kind of have that year was pretty awesome. And then I coached again the next year, the same team, but I took on B grade as well. And we won the B grade grand final that year, and wouldn't read about it. We lost the A grade grand final by 1 goal again, different team this time. And we were actually undefeated that season in A grade. So that was a bit of a heartbreaker, that one. And then, and then after that, I moved to Melbourne in 2015 and picked up coaching again in 2016. I shifted leagues and shifted clubs, which was cool. And I had some really good mentors. I went to the Golden Valley League and had some really good mentors that supported me with my coaching, and did a little bit of pathway stuff with Netball Victoria before then really before I moved to Sydney, like I said, and picked up some different coaching roles there.
And I mean, in terms of your coaching career, really did on the national kind of scale to become quite prominent when you did go to the North Shore United. I mean, what was that call like from, I'm guessing Kim Green asked you, obviously Kim Green, Australian Diamond. What was that kind of process like to then work under her, and what did you learn?
Oh, it was incredible. I actually started 2022 with North Shore United as a training partner.
Okay.
And at the time, Kim was pregnant. So during the season, she went on mat leave, and the assistant coach, took on the head coach role. And I was like, I've dabbled in some coaching before. If you need, I'm happy to help out. And then so I kind of, was an unofficial specialist coach. And then when Kim was on mat leave, I'd coach on, I'd be the assistant coach on game days, and then continue to support at training. And Kim has been so incredible to me. She is so down to earth. She's so knowledgeable. I owe her a lot in terms of some of the opportunities that I've been granted. It's been so great to me. So Kimmy G, if you are listening, I've told you before, but a big thank you to everything that you've done. And so 2022 was an incredible year, and to learn off her once she come back after her little bub was incredible. She's just such a clear communicator. She sees the game so well. And her instruction and direction is so clear. Training was always high intensity, was always engaging, was always challenging, which I loved. And, for me, you want to be able to have a really good relationship with someone and build rapport. You can have banter and you can kind of make an environment feel really good. So we were able to do that. And with our, the assistant coach, Lisa, we were able to really create good synergy between us all. And we had a really great year that year when going on to win the grand final, quite convincingly. But we had some incredible players, like Emily Moore was the captain of that team that year. And now you see that she's done so well at the Queensland Firebirds. But some of the, the personnel in that team just, it showed me the importance of connectedness within a team. And these girls were best friends off the court. And you could see that with the way that they played on the court. And then mid-2022 season, Kim called me on the way home from training one day, and, she had made the decision that she wasn't going to return the next year. She was just, had too much on her plate, and, said, would I be interested in taking over the head coach role? And I was like, oh, I'm not expecting this. I was like, I don't think that I've got the experience for it. I don't think that I have... I didn't even have the qualifications. I still have my intermediate. You need your advanced to be the head coach. I said, I don't know if I've got the skill set for it. And she's like, she backed me in and said, you do. We trust you. You're going to be great. And I was like, and I guess I got to the point where I was like, if I don't say no, I'm going to regret that more than what I would if I say yes and fail at this. So I was like, righto, let's lock in. And we did. And, I guess... my first year had some challenges, as any coaching experience does. We were, defending champions. And this club, again, the year before, in 2021, we were on top of the ladder before COVID cancelled, and then they won again in 2020. So we were kind of going for, we called it 3.5 in a row. And, there was a little bit of pressure there. We had a couple of changes in the team. Obviously, losing M. Moore was huge in terms of your captain and the playmaker going. And we brought some of our under-23s up. And I think we look back at that season, we talked about at the end of the year that we didn't feel like it was a successful season for us, yet we still finished third on the ladder and made the prelim final and obviously won more games than we lost. But that's kind of the standards and expectations that we had. And then the next year, I took it on again and brought in a new assistant coach, Eugene, who really helped as well. He helped get that attack line clicking again. And we had an incredible year. We hadn't lost a game. We lost one game throughout the season and drew one, and then won our first final and went straight into the grand final. And then, unfortunately, in the grand final, the team that we played, Magic just turned up to play more than what we did, and they just got the jump on us early. And when you're 10 or so goals down at quarter time, and it's always hard to come back from in any game, more or less in a grand final. But again, we reflect on that in the season that we had, which is pretty incredible, and to come up in opposition that had Al Temu in goal defense, Gina Crampton in wing attack, Jamie Hume in goal attack, Charlie Fiddler, who's been picked up by the Tactics in goalkeeper. Hard team to stop. But again, we loved last season, and for me as well, not being able to continue with North Shore United this season was something I had to really consider, because I loved, the way that I just love that team and that group of girls and that club. We developed incredible relationships, and I definitely didn't want to feel like I was leaving them and not leaving them in a position where they'd be out. And I knew that they wouldn't. But I wanted to continue with them to be able to really forge ahead, because we had some unfinished business to do. but like what I said before, unfortunately, you can't do everything, and when you can't do everything, you've got to get to that point where you need to make some hard decisions. But I'm absolutely rooting for them this year, and I know they've started the season off really well. I think they're 6 from 6, and their closest game's been about 14 goals. So the girls are in good hands, and I know that they're going to continue to have success.
2018 to 2022 as a men's netball athlete in Australia, at least, seemed to be quite a isolating experience. Obviously, COVID happened, but there was no nationals for 3 years. You didn't have an international test. So you did 2019 was your last nationals, then you did 2022 was your next one. You had 4 years of no international contest from 2018 to 2022. Kind of how did you keep up with the netball space in terms of being an athlete? Like, what was the physical stuff that you had to do in the background to kind of make sure that you were keeping fit and all that other stuff?
Yeah, I think I actually didn't play nationals in 2019. I had the year off after 2018. So 2018, I played nationals in Sydney, and then didn't play 2019 in Melbourne, and then like you said, my next one was 2022. But I continued to, obviously, I played M League in 2019 and then M League again in 2020. So whilst there was no international or national campaigns for various reasons, obviously COVID was big in 2020 and 2021, not allowing that to happen. We still had some domestic stuff happening in our states, which allowed us to continue to work behind the scenes to keep ourselves in condition. And I think, knowing that I wanted to keep playing, and that was always a goal of mine, was to keep playing post COVID. And I think being in that period, I think for me, exercise during that time was about, keeping yourself healthy physically, mentally, being able to get outdoors, because working from home for those stints of time that we had was quite long. So I think, you wanted to just keep yourself in best condition as well. And I think you knew that COVID wasn't going to last forever in terms of the lockdowns and things not going on. So you wanted to make sure that you're in a really good position post that to be able to come back into any sport that you wanted to play. But I think during that time, the biggest motivator was just being able to stay fit, to stay healthy, in body and mind, so you could continue to progress with what you were doing in work and life. And we also had a really good little group going on in COVID during 2020 and 2021, where we'd meet up when you could do groups of 5 in Sydney. We'd meet up, 4 or 5 times a week to exercise together and just to get outdoors and just to connect as well. So I think, the driving force is always wanting to make sure that you're in shape, ready for your next opportunity. But then there's obviously things that support that in terms of just overall health. And I think, no matter whether or not I'm playing sport or not playing sport at a really good level, I'm going to continue to make sure that I stay as healthy as possible throughout, because you just need to be able to I just think it's so important for quality of life to stay fit and to stay healthy and active.
And was another motivator also as well, just from the competitive standpoint of being a Australian netball athlete, seeing kind of what was happening in New Zealand. I mean, from at least 2019, they had that first Cadbury series, and then every single year, so 2019, 2020, 2021 onwards, they were able to have that Cadbury netball series with the Silver Ferns, getting that televised experience, kind of building their own little profile about men's netball. Was that kind of motivating seeing what they were doing in terms of being like, well, this could definitely, once we're able to get out of lockdowns and stuff like that, this could be something that we look forward to as well?
Oh, absolutely. I think seeing that come to life was incredible. And for Netball New Zealand to be, the front runners in that and get that up and going, credit to them to be so visionary, to be able to do that. And I think, if you can't see it, you can't be it. And I think that's such an important thing for men's netball, is the visibility of our sport. And we've started to see that more now. But, when carrots like that dangle in front of you, you absolutely think, what if? And for them to have that series that was so, so creative and so different for our sport was amazing to see. And it definitely gives you that added layer of motivation and a little bit of hope that that progression will continue to come, and opportunities like that will start to come to fruition for everybody involved in that sport and that in our sport. And I think that's what I've learned over time as a men's netballer. You just want to play the sport.
Mm.
we stay involved in this game for so long because we love it and we love playing and to see, like I said, to see things like that, become apparent in our sport and that opportunity be there, it definitely is a motivator to continue to stay involved and work really hard because, you just never know what might be around the corner.
Yeah. And I mean, at the end of that 2022 year, you ended up being a part of the first ever televised international men's match, and you were captain and making your debut. I mean, kind of how overwhelming was that experience? But it must have been so exciting at the same time as well that you're playing in such a historic series. Um, and I would love to also hear kind of how was that selection of becoming captain handled for that series?
Yeah, becoming captain, we had a camp between after nationals and before tour.
Hmm.
And then it kind of went through a little bit of a process there where post our camp, you were able to put forward nominations. You'd fill in a form to nominate people based on different skills, and then from
Hmm.
there they created a little bit of a short list of people who could be considered for the role of captain, and then from that. The staff went away to look at everything that had been put together, and then they made the final choice. And I'm really obviously grateful and fortunate to have been appointed the captain in that. I guess we call it kind of like the post-COVID era, and
Hmm.
really, grateful for Nerida, our head coach, for seeing that in me and believing in me that I could be that person that could lead this team. And
Mm.
I really, took that role, quite seriously, and I understood my role in terms of this is an opportunity now where we can be more visible and we can be seen, and I really wanted to make sure that what we were putting out there on and off the court was a brand that we were really proud of, and to show the netball world that we mean business, that we're skillful, that we have that element of high performance, and then when we get out on court, that we can really let our netball do the talking. And I think as our Kelpies group, I think we've really established and developed that brand over the last 3 or so years, which has been incredible to see. And obviously, we're always so wary of recognizing the people that have done the work for since the 80s to allow us to have these opportunities now, and
Mm.
those people that did everything behind the scenes and played in those tours, those Trans-Tasman tours, back 40 years ago now, have been incredible trailblazers in this sport, and we are really aware of that every single campaign, and something we do is acknowledge that every single campaign, and hopefully we're flying the flag in a really good direction for them. I think that first game in 2022 at Spark Arena was just amazing. Spark Arena is such an amazing venue to play at.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say it was overwhelming. I don't think I'm not really one to get overwhelmed too much. I kind of do a good job of processing and understanding what the context is and how I can best be the best version of myself in that context. And
Hmm.
being able to line up with the team to hear the national anthem for the first time gives you chills. And I can still
Yeah.
remember specific people on our team getting quite emotional and showing, I guess, the feeling of so much hard work and time behind the scenes that has got to this point. It was a really, really special moment, and we just loved being on that court in that moment, being able to play the sport and play against a really polished New Zealand team, and to have it in front of people, in front of fans, was a moment I'll definitely cherish forever, and one that I'll hold closely to my heart.
Yeah, and I mean, in terms of kind of your international game, the Australian Kelpies have been pretty dominant over the last couple of years. I mean, it was tightly contested that first year, but I know that last year the majority of those games were 40 plus wins, which must have been amazing for you guys, kind of putting all that hard work out there. But what do you think separates currently the Kelpies from all of your opposition? I mean,
Yeah, I think, like I said, we've worked really hard to build a really solid game plan, and, understand what connects with being able to create a really solid game plan. And,
mm,
Nerida's done such an incredible job in terms of having this vision for our program, and she's built an incredible high performance program. We've got The work that we've done around strength and conditioning has been huge to really build that, to make sure that when we do get into this space, that we're in the best position possible to make sure that we go out there and perform. We've had access to sports psychs and done work with them in this space. We've done work to really build our values and our brand and understand what that is and how we actually, need to live that and action that. So we've worked really hard off the court so that when we get on court, we're ready to go. And I think part of it is a challenge that we have within our own system here that, this year, last year, for example, we had 30 athletes that came to, Kelpies camp vying for 12 positions. And the fact that we've got such depth of talent forces everyone to be able to be on, you've got to be on all the time. You've got to be working hard because there's someone nipping at your heels ready to take your spot. And I think having that depth has allowed the people that are, the hardest thing is obviously getting in the team, but then once you get in the team, you've got to work twice as hard to maintain your position, which I think is so healthy, in our men's space in Australia. So all of that pieced together and the fact that we've been able to maintain a pretty consistent team has meant that connections have been able to build over time. And some of the connections that have been on court have been from mid-2000s as well. Some of the shooting connections have been playing together in the 21 and under, the 20 and under Oz team or the 23 and under Oz team. So they've been there for a while as well. But yeah, I think big credit to our staff and what they've been able to do to really push our program to a new level. And that's what we always have that kind of idea of what can we do to get better every year. We never become complacent with what we have. It's always about building and trying to continue to raise the bar, because that's what we want to do. We want to, you don't want to get into a position where you just become complacent, because that's when people start to catch up, and we want to continue to push the boundaries.
But yeah, I would also just love to kind of talk about the tournament that you are preparing for with New South Wales, which is the Australian Men's and Mixed Netball Association Championship. So as we had previously discussed in my last question, just that kind of dominance the Kelpies have been going through, especially with the amount of depth you kind of have, has that made the domestic competition probably the more, I know this is me being slightly brash towards the international competition, but has that made the domestic competition the most exciting and the most competitive competition that you kind of are part of?
I think, each competition that you play in is different, and the national championships here are always hotly contested.
Yeah.
The closeness of the competition has really, come together. I think, you go into a championships like this and any team can win. And there's been a little bit of reimagining how the open men's work as well. We've got 6 teams in the division, so ACT have been here. This is their second year in the opens division. They normally played in the reserves division. And instead of playing everyone twice, you play each team once now. And I think that's elevated the quality of netball. I remember playing in 2023 in WA, and we played every team twice, and then we had to play, the first final and the next final, and I think it ended up being like 12 games. And I counted the minutes at the end of the week, and I was like, I've been on court now for like over 600 minutes. In 7 days of netball. I was like, this is not sustainable.
That's crazy.
So I think, for our governing body to see that they want to make sure that the grand final is the highest quality game possible. They reimagined how they look, how our competition looked, which has added, that extra, I guess, extra pressure to make sure that you're performing every game as a team. And when you go out there, it's, even when you're going up against people in the Aussie squad or Kelpies or, Kelpies teammates, it's once you step onto over that line, there's no love lost, and you are bleeding. We're bleeding blue for New South Wales every time we step onto that court, and every other team's doing the same. But I think, the quality of netball that's being played at these national championships, all the way from our 17s all the way through, is huge. And we're starting to see that now, particularly in those junior grades. Like the junior grades have always been strong, but now that you've got the visibility of the Kelpies, these kids are coming through with the goals of wanting to be a Kelpie one day. So yeah, it's high quality netball, and like I said, any team can win at any stage, and you're competing super hard.
Yeah. What are you excited about that the New South Wales teams are going to put out there in terms of, like, I know that you guys have a very established mid-court all Kelpies or have played in the Fast Five. Your shooting end also is very experienced, and your defense end is very experienced. So, kind of, what are you most excited about that New South Wales are going to bring out?
Yeah, I think for us it's we've been building our brand over the last couple of years. I think we had some changes from the team that won in 2022.
Mm,
And some of the players now that are into their second and third year in this team have really started to own the space and understand what it takes to really compete for 60 minutes at high intensity netball all the way through, which has been really great to see. But on the flip side, we've got two debutants this year. So Jason Wellman's come in as a goalkeeper up from our
mhm,
23s, and Zach Mobilia, who's still a baby, a 19-year-old, has come into our team as well, and he adds an extra layer in the mid-court as well. So whilst we still have experience all over the court in different places, we've been able to really bring some new talent in to add depth to that. And I think for us, it's just about we've put in the work over the preseason. We've put out some really solid performances, and I think we've put ourselves in a position now where we're playing much better netball than we were this time last year, which is
mm,
great to see. And for us, it's just about what are the boundaries, and hopefully we're going to find that there are none, but.
yeah.
There's, we know, Victoria are the team to beat. They're reigning champions, and they have some
Yeah.
great experience and connection all over the court. So we're really working to make sure that we can put ourselves in a really good position to contest with them when the time comes, and understand that you can't take any team lightly as well. But for us, we're just focusing on what we can do well, what we can control, and then just making sure that any ebbs and flows that come throughout the week, that we're connected, that we live our values, and then we just see how the week unfolds.
Yeah, and sending all the best of luck, not to show bias to anyone watching, but best of luck for your week ahead. Um, and we've been talking a lot about your netball career for now, and I feel that kind of all of this experience that we've talked about has ended up with your now current position as assistant coach of the New South Wales Swifts. I mean, it must have been such an exciting call, when you got the call from Bryony. Um, I would love to hear, firstly, how did that feel? And then secondly, what was she kind of specifically targeting in terms of why she brought you in?
Yeah, it's actually funny. The day I got the call to be offered the position, I was in Melbourne doing some filming with some of the Diamonds girls
Hmm.
and for Visit Victoria, and I was in the car with some people from Netball Australia, and I answered the phone, and I was like, "Oh, I probably need to be quiet about this." And then, I think I hadn't fully made up my mind about what I was going to do if I was offered the position.
Hmm.
So I got the phone call, I processed, I called Eugene, and I was like, "Oh, this has
Yeah.
happened. What do I do? What do I do?" I was like, I didn't know if I'd have to get to this point where I had to make a choice. And he's like, "Just
Mm.
take a moment to think about it." And he was like, "I think you know what you want to do. You've just got to
Yeah.
back yourself in and just take that opportunity." So I did. So a few hours later, I called him back and accepted that position. And then, I think that was in September. And then I finished off the school term and then commenced with the Swifties in December for a couple of weeks. And I knew it was going to be different coming in, obviously, off the back of a pretty challenging 2024 for the Swifts.
Yeah.
I think for me, having trained with the girls, from 2022, 2023, 2024, I already had some pre-existing relationships, which were really helpful as well. And obviously, we've gone into camp before with the Diamonds as Kelpies, and having, been able to go on Con Cup tours with Sarah and Paige, I had
Hmm.
relationships there as well. So they've been so warm and welcoming and accepting me in. And the conversations around what my role is, I'm obviously the defense coach
Yeah.
there as well. And whilst that's my specialty area, Bryony and I are really diligent in making sure that we still talk about our ends of the court and bounce ideas off each other in those spaces as well. So, we remain connected all the way through. And we talked about what we want our defence to be known for this year, and that's about that ability to win ball as a unit, and that's what we've been working really hard on. And then we talked about, well, what can we do to get that happening? Look for our quick wins that we could get in the preseason in terms of some quick changes that we wanted to make down there, and then start to establish that long-term game plan. And I just feel so lucky to be part of this environment, and every single person there has been so warm and so welcoming. It absolutely doesn't feel like a job when I get to turn up every single day, and I'm loving the challenge of it. And I think for me, it's mirroring what what we always felt like we missed out on as male netballers, that ability to play, a home and away season over a weekend where you get to travel interstate and this happens. And for me, get to an experience in that now is unfortunately the flip side is it's probably the closest I'm ever going to get to it as a player, that week in, week out experience. But I get to do it in a different sense, which has been incredible. And I'm loving the travel. And I'm loving just, the everything that goes into it. And I think once you don't understand all of the nuances until you step into environment, the whole business side of things that goes behind it. We've got incredible commercial membership marketing teams that do so much work to allow our Swifties to get onto court every single week. And then our job as the performance team is to make sure that they're ready to go. And yeah, I think just watching it all come together and getting to experience game day. Having our first game day at RAC Arena was amazing. Perth put on an absolute show, and then being able to play at KRA last weekend in front of our fans was incredible as well. And God, I think my heart rate sits at about 200 for the whole entire game. And the girls have made all these jokes about me, but they think, and I don't even know what's happening. I've got this vein that pops out of my forehead. They're making all these little jokes at me, but I think that's what we like as well. We've been able to have so much, we've been able to create that camaraderie and have a little bit of banter, which creates a real environment. And I just can't wait to see what continues to happen throughout the season.
Yeah, and my last question will be, I just love kind of talking about your coaching styles seem quite different for you and Bryony. I mean, especially the kind of commentators huddles that we get to see. You go straight to the defense end, and you're very much like, this is what needs to be done. Do it. And then you allow that collaboration of trying to figure out how to actually do it. Where Bryony, I think you see her, she's all smiles and happy, and she'll come in and be like, the first half is definitely just waiting for you to finish. And then she's just like, bring the energy, rah, rah, rah. So I'd love to talk about that contrast and how that is kind of working. I mean, it must be such an amazing experience learning off of Bryony and also being able to have that collaboration at such a high level.
Yeah, it is. And she's an absolute whiz. She knows the ins and outs. She knows how to read moments and read situations. Gigi actually said, she's like, no, you're not good cop, bad cop. You guys remind me of like Batman and Robin. And I was like, God, that's such a better way to put it. Than a good cop, bad cop. So we're going to take that. But no, she's been incredible to learn off. The way that she can think so outside the box is amazing. And her ideas that she's been able to come up with and bring those ideas to life is incredible. And that's, something she's been able to develop over time. And she loves being able to share that wisdom and share that knowledge with me. And I think I'm still, I guess, adjusting to different things that sit within SSN. Those times happen and you've got 90 seconds. I'm like, oh my God, I've got 90 seconds. By the time I get across, 30 seconds are gone. And then I'm just, sometimes it all just comes out a little bit too quick or whatever it might be. But the girls know that that's just part of my personality. And they know the intent with it. But the defense, girls have been so great there. They like, and we obviously have conversations about, what's the best way for me to deliver the message. And like, you need to be clear and you need to be quick. And then we can engage in that discussion from there. So it's not just a matter of, this is my style and you'll jump on board with my style. It's like, what's for all of us together. And they've really responded well to that. They like that clarity. They like that directness. And they kind of have said, they're like, oh, we know if we've done something well and we know if we need to do something better. But they never, they're never in a position where, and I think for me, being a primary school teacher, you don't ever want to make someone feel like they're in a position where, they're worried or whatever it is. They're like, I try to build that relationship so they know when I'm saying something, it means, what it means and it has some significance behind it. And I think, everyone's got different coaching styles and that's absolutely fine. It's good that people have different coaching styles, so they should.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, you don't want to be robotic. You don't want to be, whatever that might look like. So I think the way that we can bounce off and read situations from each other Yeah, is really good. And, my personality in those high pressure moments and in any competitive moment is pretty full on, pretty to the point. And that's just who I am. And it is what it is. You learn to develop and make little changes over time, but at the core of me, that's who I am.
I mean, you've got to embrace everything about yourself, and you've had such a amazing season so far, and I'm hoping nothing for the best. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a massive honor. And yeah, nothing but the best for the rest of the season.
No, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. And yeah, absolutely. Let's go Swifties. Let's go New South Wales and hopefully the Kelpies at the end of the year as well.
Yeah, but yeah, as a Kiwi fan, we'll hope for a win. We'll hope for a win somewhere. But yeah, we'll take what we can get. Okay. Thank you so much.